Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a champion of women's rights.
But rather to be spiritual beings who are connecting with God Almighty.
Suggesting that, morality comes from God Himself.
The very nature of man is that man was created weak.
Love God with all your heart and mind.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome to the fourth episode of Face2Face 2018. This is the fourth stage of our group rounds, and inshallah we will see another 5 Khuddam participate in today's show. So far in the previous 3 episodes we have seen 15 Khuddam participate and compete in giving the best possible answer to the question and scenario provided by our team. Altogether, we have had 6 of them go through. Inshallah, 2 further Khuddam will go through from today's show and go through to the semi-finals. Inshallah, we'll explain just a bit about what happens on Face2Face in just a short while. On today's program, though, we will ask our Khuddam to answer the following question. During an interview with a media outlet, you are asked, is Islam not a male chauvinist religion where the woman is required to cover herself, seclude herself, and given less importance in many other areas of life? What would be your answer? This is the question that our Khuddam brothers from around the world, inshallah, will answer in today's show. What happens on this show? An age-old question, and I'm sure we'll get that, asked that continuously, but it is our duty to inform our viewers about what happens on this show. At the outset, we had 25 Khuddam selected from a pool of entries, and the 25 were selected. In the first 5 shows, we will see 5 qualifying rounds, and inshallah, from those qualifying rounds, 2 Khuddam will make it through to the semi-finals. In the semi-final stage, we will have a total of 10 Khuddam, as you can see on the screen, and they will compete in giving answers to the best possible answers to our questions. And then, inshallah, 2 from each semi-final will go through to the final, and from the final, we will have 1 winner of Face2Face 2018, and that winner will, inshallah, be given the chance to host a show on MTA International. And with that, I should remind the viewers at home that if you wish to participate in future Face2Face shows, you can email us at face2face@mta.tv, face2face@mta.tv. Send us your name, your qiyadat, your country, and inshallah you will be contacted next time Face2Face is almost about to launch its show, and inshallah you will be contacted with regard to participating on the show. With regard to voting as well, a slight difference from last year. We upload our entries now 24 hours before the show. So 24 hours before today, which was yesterday evening, local time, we uploaded our 5 entries for today, and we gave the viewers the chance to vote for their favorite 2 contestants. That is something that will be consistent in the coming weeks, and to do so, to vote, you can go to www.mta.tv/face2face. Also, you can share your thoughts with us. We have just announced the question for today. I will announce it in just a short while as well. But if you wish to share your thoughts, and do share your thoughts with us, you can share your thoughts via Twitter. Face2Face_MTA is our Twitter handle, at Face2Face_MTA. We are also present on Instagram as well, with the handle being Face2Face_MTA. And with that, it is my pleasure to once again invite you, the judges, our expert panel of judges. To my left, we have Ayaz Mahmood Khan Sahib, who is a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, who is serving in the publications wing. We have Khalil Ali Yusuf Sahib, who is a lawyer and deputy director of the International Press Office of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat. And we have Sayyid Amir Safir Sahib, who is the chief editor of the Review of Religions. Gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, Jazakumullah for joining us today, and we are looking forward to once again a wonderful show ahead of us. As I announced on today's show, we will see, or on Face2Face generally, we will see various questions being asked to our Khuddam brothers. And on today's show, the question that we have selected for our Khuddam is, during an interview with a media outlet, you were asked, is Islam not a male chauvinist religion where the woman is required to cover herself, seclude herself, and given less importance in many other areas of life? Just before we get into this, Ayaz Sahab, I just wanted to briefly ask you, now this is a question that would probably seem better answered by a Muslim woman. Do you think that that is a challenge for the Khuddam to answer this question, which is directly addressed to the women of Islam, but Khuddam, yani men, are having to answer this question?
If the question is whether it's a challenge, I don't think it should be a challenge as such for men or women to answer this question, because the answer will always be based on the teachings of Islam. It will be based on the Holy Quran. It will be based on the example of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. But if the question is why Muslim women don't come out and answer this question, that is something of a different nature. And the fact is that Muslim women, and particularly Ahmadi Muslim women, are in the forefront in answering these questions. And there are so many examples of the eloquent manner in which they respond to these questions and allegations, and show so beautifully that Islam is not a male chauvinist religion. Islam is a religion which has given more rights, if anything, to the women than it has to the men. So when we talk about this question today, I think the male participants today shouldn't have any challenges. They have everything before them, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say.
And indeed, the women of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat are very, at the forefront of answering this. And I should say that we have received many messages from the ladies of the Jamaat in answer to this question. Inshallah, we'll go into those in just a short while. But before we do, let's now turn to our first contestant, Umar Amir Sahib from Canada. Umar Amir Sahib, Assalamu alaikum, and how are you?
Wa alaikum salam, Qasid Sahib. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Brilliant. Alhamdulillah, I'm well. Jazakallah for asking. This is your first time now participating, I believe, on Face2Face. How are you feeling at the moment? Nervous, excited?
Definitely nervous, excited as well, because I'm looking forward to getting the feedback from the judges, but mainly excited.
Brilliant. And on a lighter note, being a Canadian, I have to ask you, French vanilla coffee, are you a fan or not?
Growing up, I was a fan, but I think I hit a time where it got way too sweet for me, so I sort of had to leave that on the burner.
Okay, that might have an effect on your results. I can't say for certain.
Have an effect on my results.
Ayasa, being a Canadian, that might have an effect, but no. On a serious note, obviously that probably won't. But on a more serious note, what are you hoping to achieve from this process?
So considering that it is my first, attempt at this show, one of the biggest things that I hope to get from it is enough feedback so that I can cater my further approach to questions that I may get from Ahmadis, non-Muslims. Just in general, like how I'm responding, my sources of my knowledge, how my approach is, how my tone is. So I hope to get feedback on that so that I can better that moving forward.
Great. Let's have a look now and see if you did just that in your answer to today's question. Let's take a look.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. One of the biggest misconceptions that surrounds the religion of Islam is that it is a religion deeply rooted in misogyny, God forbid. And to address this issue, one needs to recognize that the concept of male superiority has always been a cultural issue and never really an Islamic one. Allow me to explain. You see, prior to the advent of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the status of women was that of second or even third class citizens. A woman was not considered owner of her own property, rather it was her husband. A woman could not receive a share of her father's wealth, and nor was she considered an heir to her husband's wealth. Once a woman was married to a man, she was declared his forever, and under no circumstances was she to part from him. If her husband ran away, there were no laws in place that safeguarded her rights. Rather, she was expected to simply resign to her fate and earn a living for herself and her children. The assumed value of women in that time was no more than that of property, so much so that a man was considered fully within his rights to merchandise his wife, or to use her as a material asset in a gamble or a wager. So you see, pre-Islamic culture was so backwards in terms of their treatment of women that it was considered an embarrassment to have a daughter being born into your family. And this subsequently led to fathers burying their infant daughters alive. So you see, these inequalities in fact predate Islam. And it wasn't until the advent of Islam and our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that these cruelties were swiftly laid to rest. It was our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who declared in the name of God Almighty that man and women are equal to one another by virtue of humanity. And as men have certain rights over women, women too have certain rights over men. It was Islam that declared that daughters are to be considered rightful heirs to their parents' wealth. And similar to that, wives are to be considered rightful heirs to their husband's wealth. It was Islam that declared that women too could work and earn a living for themselves, and that they too could own property autonomously from their husbands, and that their husbands had absolutely no right to spend out of their wealth. And these are concepts that are, were completely unheard of even in the United States up until the last century. It wasn't until 1920 that women were given the right to vote. And it wasn't until 1960, I believe, that they entered the workforce in large enough numbers. So you see, Islam prescribed these equalities 1400 years ago. So to answer this question in short terms, I would say that no, Islam is not a religion that gives women less importance. Rather, it was the advent of Islam that recognized that women have intrinsic value as human beings. And that a woman need not be defined as someone's wife or someone's sister or someone's daughter. She is to be defined as herself in her own right. Jazakumullah.
That was Umar Amir Sahib from Canada. Just before we turn to the judges, I just want to quickly read out some messages. Like I said at the beginning, we've received many messages from especially women of the Jamaat. Nargis Nasir Sahiba says, both men and women are equal in the sight of God and only righteous deeds elevate one person above another. Allah has declared in several verses of the Holy Quran that He has created men and women as equal beings. And she quotes 3 or 4 verses of the Holy Quran. Then she says, men are addressed first in the Holy Quran to lower their gazes. Hereafter, women are commanded to lower their gaze and to dress modestly. We Muslim women cover ourselves to fulfill this command of God. We are not secluded or oppressed, as many wrongly assume. Amir Sahib, how was Umar Sahib's answer?
I think, Umar Sahib, Assalamu alaikum. Umar Sahib, I feel, Umar Sahib, you made a good attempt and you did cover some key points. However, at the same time, I do feel you need to go a bit further and you need to almost put a mirror. This question is quite deceiving in a sense. And if you put a mirror to people and show them how the society is today, Islam, if you tell them that, look, Islam is doing all these things to prevent certain situations arising. In the current era, in the Western societies, which promote absolute liberalism, no restrictions anywhere between men and women as such, we are seeing in the last few years especially, huge scandals erupting from every sphere of life, even parliament. From, we saw well-known scandals in the movie industry. We saw it even in universities. There's been surveys which show that a large proportion of students, female students at universities in the UK and in America have reported cases of sexual abuse, etc. So I feel also you need to put a mirror to them and show them what is happening in their society and how the solution that they have come up with is not actually working and people are fighting against it. And then show that this is why Islam does not say to seclude, Islam does not say to exclude, Islam says to create a balance so that women and men can live in a society to prevent such problems happening.
Yeah, look, I mean, I thought the way that he delivered the answer was really good. He had a great tone, and I think there was a good structure, there was great historical context. But the reality is that if you're speaking with the media, you have to be sure that you answer the question straight away. You need to get to that answer and say that Islam actually doesn't portray women in this way, and in fact, women are much more free than the perspective that is given in the Western media, and you have to go about explaining why. The other point that I would make is that it's all very well giving a good historical context, but the reality is that the question is being asked in the context of perceptions today. So you need to talk about what people today are saying about the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the rights that were granted to women. You can talk about what Karen Armstrong says. You can talk about what the Chief Inspector of Schools says about segregation. You can talk about what the Chief Justice of 1949 said about the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. My point is that you have to bring current examples in order to respond to current issues.
How was his style of delivery? Was it what you would expect from an Ahmadi representative or a Muslim representative towards a media outlet?
I think as far as the tone of voice and the manner in which he presented himself, that was very respectful, very dignified, and of course that's something which we would expect from any Ahmadi Muslim speaking to a media outlet. One thing which I would mention is that a very important aspect of that question was specifically about seclusion, and that wasn't addressed in the answer, and that should have been spoken about. And as Khalil Sahib said, if you're in a media situation, the first thing to do is respond by saying, well, no, women are not secluded, and give examples of how women are not secluded in our present day, and then give these examples as well. But that wasn't there in this answer.
Let me just add one other thing, and that is that the perspectives about Islam are very much framed not just by what the media says, but by the way that Muslims outside of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community project women. And we really have a guiding principle in the Khulafa and what they have said. Hazur spoke about the topic of women in 2012 in Germany. He's spoken about it in 2017. And so really focusing on what Hazur has said about these subjects and what our own women have said is an essential part of answering this question.
Brilliant. Jazakallah, Khalil Sahib. And Umar Amir Sahib, I hope that has summarized a bit about your answer, and obviously we wish you all the best in the coming rounds or the coming few minutes when we will gather all our votes together. But in the meantime, let's speak to Yusuf Pender from Ireland. Brother Yusuf Pender, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Wa alaikum salam. Great. Yusuf Sahib, very briefly, we're running short on time. If you could just tell us briefly, as a Muslim, have you faced any questions such as the one we're focusing on currently, or any other such questions and scenarios?
Yes, I mean, in Ireland, we're quite active and we do, for example, Islamic information stalls. So every week we're out on the street meeting people. So we get asked those questions very directly. The question about women's rights, particularly what's happening in the world, it is a question we get a lot. So it is, I mean, and other questions like, Sharia law and so on and so forth. Yeah. But the question which is being tackled today, I think, is one of the most pressing, considering the condition of women in, I suppose, some so-called Muslim countries.
Brilliant. And let's see now how Brother Yusuf Pender did in his answer to today's question.
Assalamu alaikum. One of the allegations which, as Muslims, we often have to listen to and we have to answer is when people claim that Islam is a chauvinist religion. And this means that, God forbid, Islam is a religion which undervalues women or does not grant women their rights. However, if we look at the teachings and the history of Islam, we can realize that nothing could be further from the truth. Over 1400 years ago, Islam granted women rights which were equal to those of men. For example, women were granted the right to choose their own husband, to divorce, to own and inherit their own wealth and property, and to be educated, to name but a few. These very rights were only granted to women in Western countries within the last 50 to 100 years. When it comes to the rights and equality of men and women in Islam, the Holy Quran declares that men and women are equal. They have gender equality. Allah mentions the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Nisa, which is the chapter entitled The Woman, that those of you who do good works, be they male or female, and is a believer, they shall enter paradise, and no injustice shall be done to them. Regarding the roles of men and women within society, Islam acknowledges that though men and women are equal, they are not the same. They have different attributes. They have different strengths and weaknesses which complement one another. Therefore, Allah has laid upon men a responsibility which He has not laid upon women. For example, Allah says in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah that women have rights similar to those of men, but men have a rank of responsibility over them, and Allah is the mighty, the wise. When it comes to the subject of how men and women dress in Islam, Islam teaches that both men and women must behave and dress in a way which shows modesty. Because women, of course, have different physiological attributes to men, in addition, women are also advised to cover their hair and their bosoms. And this is simply to save them from harassment as they go out into the society. Regarding how men and women interact with each other, Islam does teach that men and women should not freely associate with each other or should not casually mix with one another. But it's wrong to say that this somehow restricts women. There are Muslim women who are doctors, who are teachers, who are business persons, and they freely interact with men, which is a necessary part of their work. But rather, beyond that, Islam does not advise that men and women should just casually mix with one another. When we look and take all of the teachings of Islam together regarding men and women, we can see that full rights are granted to women as men. And this is the reason why I'm very proud to call myself a Muslim and to practice Islam.
That was Brother Yusuf Pender from Ireland answering today's question. And just briefly, if you wish to participate in future programs, you can email us your name, qiyadat and country, and if you wish to participate, obviously, on our program. And you can email us that information at face2face@mta.tv. Khalil Sahib, how was Brother Yusuf Pender?
I thought he was very good. Assalamu alaikum, Yusuf Sahib. I'd like to have seen a little bit more conviction, and I think that what I've seen so far in this and the previous one is a little bit of a defensive approach. I mean, I would really want people to come to this question and argue it in a much more forthright way and say that actually men and women are absolutely different. And the idea that you can make men and women exactly the same is a fallacy. You don't have women in the Olympics, do you, doing weightlifting or boxing with men, and you don't because they're different. And so having an argument or a discussion about those fundamental differences is essential, and to do it without having fear that, you know, in some ways you might be not accepted, I think is important. Yeah.
Amir Sahib, I felt that Brother Yusuf was very polite in his approach towards the scenario, media outlet. So how did that, do you think, reflect on?
I think that's okay. It's good to be polite. What I would say to Yusuf Sahib is, if he's in Ireland and you're asking this question about covering, you could give the example of the Virgin Mary, who's revered by so many Christians in Ireland, having a rich Christian history. There's many nuns who still cover themselves. No one has a problem for that. It's seen as something which is actually quite respectable. So in that sense, but I want to add the point where you said that men and women are equal, but they are different in some things. I think it's you should explain it in the way Hazur explains it. And what Hazur has said, that, for example, it's very important to highlight that intellectually there is no difference. A woman can become as educated as a man, if not more. And this is a key point. In terms of mental ability, in terms of intelligence, in terms of mental acumen, there is no difference. The difference, as mentioned, is physically, and as a result, their differences of responsibilities have given. But I'd like to give one example, which I remember once we were doing an article in Review of Religions, and Hazur gave us this example, which shows how actually women in the exchange of responsibilities have more rights. So if, for example, a woman is earning £500,000, for example, and a man is earning £500, the man, the husband, has to fully fulfill all the duties of the household, and he has no right of even a single penny over the woman, even if she's earning 500 times more. So if anything, the woman has more rights.
Ayasab, with your permission, if we can just skip you for now, because I have to make up some time. The producers are telling me to move on, but inshallah we'll come to you just a short while. Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahab, I'm being told that we're trying to contact you. If you can just please get in touch with our team. We're trying to contact you. You are scheduled to join us in literally a couple of minutes, so please pick up your phone. In the meantime, we'll go to Mahir Ahmadiyya Sahab from Canada. Mahir Sahib, Assalamu alaikum, and how are you?
Wa alaikum assalam, alhamdulillah, I'm doing well.
Mahir Sahib, being the second time I'm seeing you on Face to Face, I believe, I do recall you in last year's show. What is the drive that, pushes you to actively participate on a platform like this?
Well, a platform so grand like MTA, any opportunity to be involved with MTA in any way is definitely a big blessing. And then also you learn so much from doing this competition. So I guess that's what I'm really here for.
Brilliant. That sounds great. And bearing in mind this question, have you ever been asked this question? I know Canada is a very friendly nation with very friendly people. Have you ever come across this question?
Yes, of course, because many times when we do tabligh, they will say, what you are saying about Islam is very beautiful. But when we look at Muslim countries, it's the complete opposite. And then that gives us the opportunity to say, that they're not following the true Islam, and in fact, Ahmadiyya is the true Islam.
Brilliant. Let's see now how Mahir Atinsa from Canada did in response to our question today.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, let's realize Islam is a religion that acknowledges the differences between men and women. There are differences emotionally, physically, mentally, and as a result, Islam simply defines and assigns different roles and responsibilities for each. Now let's look at the situation and treatment of women in Arabia before the advent of Islam. Women were literally treated like property. The sons would inherit the wives of their dead fathers. It was also common to bury young daughters alive, because young daughters being born was considered such a great dishonor for the family. Islam came and abolished all these barbaric principles and traditions. Instead, Islam provided women with basic fundamental human rights. Women were given the right to inheritance, the right to education, even the right to vote 1,300 years before the West gave women the right to vote. Now, as for covering themselves, keep in mind, this is not exclusive to Islam. This is seen in many other religions, including Christianity, Judaism, even Sikhism and Hinduism. It stems from the basic principle of modesty. Even look today in the West, gyms and swimming pools will have reserved spots or reserved times for women only. Why is that? It's because they acknowledge the need for modesty in the society. And so does Islam. And it's done through covering oneself, which also protects women from the glances of other males, a source of great discomfort for many women. Now, as a result, given that women are told to cover themselves, they don't have to do that when they're surrounded by just women. So when they're secluded and have their own events, they have that freedom to sort of relax. Now, ask the women in these positions. When they hold their own events, they'll say that we get to elect our own leaders, we hold our own events without men interfering in any way, and speak about issues and problems that are specific to them. Furthermore, the status of women is in no way less than men. In fact, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, when speaking of mothers, said that paradise lies under the feet of mothers. Think about how grand such a status is. And that status is only reserved for women. So Islam is not a male chauvinistic religion. In fact, it's given the burden of responsibility on men, because it's men who have to provide for their spouses and their children and their families, whereas the women do not. It's the men who have to safeguard and protect the women. And the greatest status, the status of mothers, is reserved just for women. Jazakallah.
And Yasab, that was Mahir Ahmed Sahib from Canada. How great was that video? Or I
think Mahir Sahib spoke in a good tone. He was eloquent. He was fluent in his speech. One thing I would reiterate, though, which I've felt, and I think we all feel in these answers, is that they come off too defensive. I think when somebody asks you point blank, why are women secluded in Islam? Islam is a male chauvinist religion. We need to highlight at the very outset that, well, Islam is not a male chauvinist religion. We have had leading women in the history of Islam who have attained such great heights that men have not attained those heights. If I was asked that question, that's the first thing, that would be my first punchline, to refute that allegation. You say we have people like Hazrat Aisha, the wife of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, about whom the Holy Prophet said that you can learn half of your faith from Aisha, who used to deliver lectures and who was known as one of the greatest scholars in Arabia at that time. You have the example of Fatima al-Fihri and her involvement in establishing education. And so give these examples at the very outset and show that women are not secluded. Islam doesn't tell us to keep women in one corner and allow them to not take part in human life. That's not true.
In other words, this is an allegation which shouldn't even be raised. It's just
right. And to again put it back on the people asking these questions. Well, you raise a lot of objections against Islam's teachings of modesty, but what are we seeing in this day and age? In this society where modernness means to take off your clothes, are we seeing these problems progress, or are problems getting lesser? And ask them this question, because we're always the ones that are responding in a defensive way, and it shouldn't be that way.
Khalid, do you feel the same?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think there are excellent points that Iyaz Bhai has raised, and I would say that it's important to ensure that you answer the question based also on what's happening at this point now. So I think if you're talking about segregation, you can grab that argument head on and you can say that freedom for women doesn't mean that they are defined by their proximity to men. A woman is not more free just because men have access to her. And there are movements all over the world at the moment that are designed to ensure that women themselves are able to be judged on the basis of who they are, not how they look or where they sit in society. And Islam has been doing that for 1400 years. So making that direct argument in the context of what's happening today is, in my view, essential.
I think in terms of that, just alluding to that, we have received a very interesting tweet. We haven't got the actual name, but the Twitter handle is @Malik77_M. And she has, I'm inferring from the message that she is a female, but let me read the message out. She says, I feel very strongly about this question as a Muslim mother and teacher. The guidance to cover oneself is not to shut yourself away from society. You can still go about your business dressed in a modest fashion. I would argue that the non-stop bombardment of images featuring almost naked women is harming our children and society in ways that we can't even imagine. What are we teaching our girls? That your only value is how you look? That the desirable look is something which is unattainable and only for the attraction of men. Why aren't we encouraging our young women to excel in science, technology, engineering and mathematics? This is obviously about the general population of the world, but Islam encourages women, she says, and men to be educated. We, the women, are not excluded from this.
This is actually, a great tweet, because if you look at how society has progressed, society started off when they didn't really have any clothes at all at the time of cavemen, and then as you progressed up through to the Victorian era, people started to wear more clothes, and the more clothes that you wore, the higher your status in society. And suddenly now, as we get into the 20th and the 21st century, the less you wear, then in my view, you're probably actually going back in terms of your civilization rather than forward.
Amir Sab.
I think in terms of the answer, it's good to give some current day examples as well to exemplify what we're trying to say. So in terms of, I remember once Khuddamul Ahmadiyya was asked this in a question answer, and he said, if you look at it, because the answers are all well and good, what we've been giving, but the question could arise, why does a woman have to cover herself and a man doesn't in Islam? Yes? This could boil down to this. Yeah. I remember Khuddamul Ahmadiyya once said that essentially, Islam says that women are better than men, and men can't be trusted. And this ties in with what the Prophet Messiah has said, that if you put meat in front of a dog, that's equivalent of how man's base desires are. So essentially, Islam is saying that women are to be trusted, women are better people, and this is why Islam has given them more rights, but also protected their values and their safety. So I think if it's presented in this way as well, this could help.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, we have heard now three of the answers from our contestants. Three Khuddam brothers. We have heard from Umar Amir Sahib, Yusuf Penda Sahib and Mahir Ahmed Sahib. You can go online and you can vote for your favorite contestant so far. You can choose two of your favorite contestants. You can go to our website www.mta.tv/face-to-face. There you can vote for your favorite two contestants. We have remaining two contestants now, two Khuddam brothers. Junaid Ahmed Faraj Sahib from Pakistan. Junaid Sahib, how are you?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah.
Brilliant. Junaid Sahib, this is a question we just discussed. This may, it's debatable, this may seem more suitable being addressed to a woman who is a Muslim. How do you see this? Is it okay for you to answer this question in terms as being a Muslim man, or would you pass this on to a female Muslim?
Well, as the judges have already said that the teachings of Islam are same, both for men and women. So if a woman would answer, it will be the exact same as a man will answer the question.
Brilliant. Fair point. That is exactly what we wanted to hear. That wasn't a trick question, though. But let's go now and see what you had to say in answer to this question.
The teachings of Islam emphasize that men and women are to be respected equally. Allah Almighty states in the Holy Quran, I quote, He has created you from a single being and then from the same kind made its mate. Chapter 39, verse 7. This single verse removes all doubt of inferiority leveled at women by men. The Holy Quran further ensures women equality on the spiritual, social, economic and intellectual level. The citing example of women from some Muslim countries, certain people believe that Islam is a male chauvinistic religion. Their mistake is that they fail to separate the culture and hidden agendas of a given people from the true teachings of Islam. Islam condemns the oppression of women. It is tragically unjust to blame those practices on the beliefs when the teachings of that religion do not call for such behavior. You must be amazed to find that Muslim women are enjoying those rights for which Western women are still struggling. Women in pre-Islamic Arabia were barred from social and civil rights. Islam was introduced in the 6th century and the condition of women improved substantially. Islamic law made education compulsory for girls and gave women rights to own and inherit property. Their consent was made compulsory as in the condition of legitimate marriage. And meanwhile, in Europe and America, women were denied the rights to own and inherit property until 18th century. Now coming to the point that women should cover themselves in Islam. In chapter 24, verses 31 and 32 of the Holy Quran, it clearly shows that it is both for men and women to conduct themselves with modesty and propriety, especially when they are in each other's presence. This teaching is based on the fact that prevention is better part of the cure. Now, the point that Parda somehow oppresses Muslim women and it should be banned is far from protecting Muslim women, because it further undermines their freedom of expression and the way they will present themselves in public. It is outrageous to see that when a woman covers herself from head to toe in winter, we feel that she is free to practice her rights. And when a woman covers herself for religious and social norms, we feel that she is oppressed.
That was Junaid Ahmed Baraij Sahib from Pakistan. Amir Sahib, just a brief question before, and then you can obviously go ahead and comment on, what you heard from Junaid Sahib. Why is it that this question is being levied? Like you've already mentioned, the judges have said already, we see that there are so many imbalances in society now. Why is it that this question is constantly heard?
I think there's two reasons which Hazur has, I recall to mind that is mentioned. One, there is a cultural Islam being practiced in many places. So for example, an example Hazur has given is that in many of our Eastern cultures, there are cruelties between mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. This does exist, and this exists sometimes to a large degree. And these because they are mainly Muslim countries, the perception is that this is a Muslim thing, whereas this is not a Muslim thing. Secondly, what I would like to say is that Hazur has mentioned that out of all the religions, Islam is the only religion which is being practiced to such a large degree. Most of these other religions have been stripped away, have been diluted, or have been dissected by people who have attacked them. Whether practicing or non-practicing, Islam is the only one left, and therefore there is an agenda against Islam and double standards being portrayed in the media and elsewhere to try and strip Islam of what is left.
But now that it is being asked on today's platform, that obviously sums up why it's being asked. But now that it's being asked, how was Junaid Sahib, very briefly?
Junaid Sahib, I think the last point he made was probably the strongest point. It's a point that Hazur has made several times, which is that in the winter, there's people, in fact, you can see now, sometimes you can't even tell. You think that they have actually done parda, the way they're using their scarf. And that's not a problem at all. No one bats an eyelid. But when a Muslim woman does it, then these issues are raised. So there is an issue of double standards in this sense. For example, recently with the issue with the hijab in the schools, what we found is that they were questioning the young girls wearing hijabs in schools, but they were not questioning the young Jewish students wearing skull caps or the young Sikh students wearing the turban. So there is also a question of an agenda.
Khalil Sahib, briefly, if you could just summarize.
I quite liked his answer. I mean, he's in Pakistan, and I thought that the way that he presented his answer would work very well with the media in Pakistan. I mean, one of the things that I liked was I could see his hands, and I would really like to see people standing up, and so that I can not just hear what they're saying and see their face and their lips, but actually also their hands and their body language, which I think would really get their point of view across in a much stronger way. But I think what he could have done is I think he could have talked a little bit more about what Hazur has said about women. I mentioned, what Hazur had said to the Lajna in Germany and after that as well, without obviously mentioning Hazur's name because he's in Pakistan. He's not in a position to be able to do that. And the other thing that I would also say is, particularly within his jurisdiction, focus a lot more on the history of Hazrat Aisha radhiyallahu anha. She was called the horizon of the ladies of Islam. She was a physician, she was a military leader. Most of the jurisprudence, majority of jurisprudence has come from her, and Ayaz Bhai mentioned that obviously in the last answer as well. So I think for his jurisdiction, it would be very useful to focus on that as an example.
Ayaz Sahib, best I can do right now is 30 seconds. If you could just summarize and tell Junaid Sahib what he can maybe improve for future.
I think it was wonderful. I think one thing which I do think was lacking, which should have been mentioned at the very beginning, was that, look, Islam does not seclude women. Any concept of parda, as the promised Messiah ﷺ has said, of parda, which is equivalent to putting women in prison and barring them from the outside world, is a completely flawed understanding of parda. We don't believe in that. Women in Islam are leaders. They go out into the world around them. They are playing active roles. Islam's history establishes that. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a wonderful example of that in this day and age. And then talk about, we sort of are going down this track of speaking about the general topic of women's rights, but that's not, that is part of the question, but that's not the question.
Brilliant. Judges, Jazakumullah for that. Junaid Sahib and indeed the other three contestants that we've had so far. I hope what the judges have said will be a means of improving and upping your game in the coming shows if you do manage to go through. But if you don't, obviously only 2 can go through. We hope that what you have learnt here will be beneficial in some way or form in the future. We have heard, as I've just mentioned, 4 of our contestants. The next contestant is Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib from Burkina Faso. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get through to him, but taking advantage of the few seconds that I have, you can vote for your favorite 2 contestants. Right now, you can go to www.mta.tv/face2face. Vote for your favorite 2 contestants there. You can also watch the videos in the 19 or so minutes that you have remaining. I'm not sure that may be possible, just about possible. You can go there and watch those videos, then decide for yourself who you feel those 2 contestants should be to go through to the semi-finals from today. If you wish to participate on future face-to-face shows, inshallah, we look forward to bringing this in the coming future as well. You can email us your name, qiyadat and country at face2face@mta.tv, face2face@mta.tv. Send us your details and inshallah we will try our utmost and level best to include you in the coming shows. Let's now go and take a look at the answer of Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib from Burkina Faso.
Firstly, this is absolutely a false allegation against Islam. Allah the Almighty states in the Holy Quran in chapter 2 verse 229 that, "And they, the women, have rights similar to those of man over them in equality." In the entire history of mankind, it is only the religion of Islam that gave equal rights to men and women in spiritual, social, economic and moral values. But in fact, women have been given a sort of distinction. How? As a mother, Islam has quite literally raised the status of women from when they were below the earth to so high that paradise lies at their feet. Moreover, once a companion of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, asked, "Who is more worthy of my treatment?" Thrice the Holy Prophet replied, "Your mother," and the 4th time, "Your father." And as a wife, Islam ordered man that the best one among you is he who is better in his attitude towards wife. In West, till 18th century, women did not have rights of inheritance. Islam gave rights to women a long time ago in 7th century. Right of inheritance, right of getting married with their own will, right of alimony, right of separation. As far as the commandments of birth are concerned, before ordering women, Islam enjoins men to observe ghazir basar, that is to lower their gaze from looking at women. Now, why does a Muslim women observe parda? The objective is to keep us away from getting plunged into illegal relations that are found rampant in those societies which proclaim liberty. So parda is to protect women, not to imprison them, but to cultivate chastity and piety in society. Islam does not teach women to be in seclusion, because the history of Islam and the practice of Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the true Islam, is a witness that Muslim women are free to work and to progress in all walks of life. and they're excelling as doctors, engineers, and teachers, etc. And the Muslim women in the lifetime of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, would also participate in wars, curing injured persons. So, it is oppressive acts of extremists which is becoming the cause of the reason that it is widely spread that Islam is the male chauvinist religion.
That was Mirza Atar Rauf Sahib from Burkina Faso in answer to the question today. Today's question, Khalil Sahib, how good or how was that for you? Do you think he answered the question?
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good answer. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that I would suggest. In Africa, there is a protocol on the rights of women, a charter, which was signed in 2003. And there were lots of reservations in relation to marriage and the rights of women generally. And I think it would be really good if he were to use that as a comparator and show that, in fact, Islam was guaranteeing all of these rights long before this 2003 charter. So I think that would be one area that he could certainly focus on.
Assalamu alaikum. Mirza Atar Rauf Sahib, I believe you're with us. Can you hear me?
Walaikum assalam. Yes, I'm here.
Brilliant. Mirza Atar Rauf Sahib, I hope you're well. You're listening to the answers. Khalid, would you like to add anything?
Assalamu alaikum. So you probably heard my first point. The second point really is, I think, particularly in the context of your jurisdiction, it's important to focus on the fact that women are nation builders. Now, Hazur Ayyadullah Ta'ala bin Aziz has actually referred to women as nation builders, and I think that it's very important that that context, their role in the establishment and progression of society, is really highlighted in the context of their role as women, and I think that's highly relevant, particularly in your jurisdiction.
Amir Sahib, would you like to say anything to Mirza
Atar Rauf Sahib from last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Mirza Atar Rauf Sahib, you did participate. You were with us last year, weren't you?
Yeah, I did participate. I reached the quarterfinal, quarterfinal, and I reached the semi-final. I was just not on the last time.
Okay, right. Amir Sahib, go ahead.
Last year we referred to him as the person with the BBC documentary-style accent.
Very articulate in his accent.
No, I think it's very good, mashallah. I would think that perhaps, as we've said before, if you're speaking to the media, it kind of sometimes came across as if you were delivering a speech. And if you're speaking to the media, I believe a more natural and direct style would be more appropriate. And I also feel, again, what I've said, what I mentioned before, and if you read Hazur's speeches, he provides a balance. So he defends the misconceptions about Islam which have been created by some sections of the Muslim society, but he also puts a mirror to the society today. And more than ever, right now in this current time, we are seeing the society, the very liberal society, being exposed to the extent that now you will find in many countries, you will find in Rio de Janeiro, Moscow, Cairo, Japan, they've started women-only train carriages. In Italy, they started a women-only beach. In America, in some hotels, they have started women-only floors. So the question is, you should put it to them, why are they doing this? They are physically separated. In some places, they have started doing this as a result of massive exposure of information of assaults by men and women in crowded spaces. So Islam is offering a solution, and this is the solution of Islam. So I believe this also needs to be mentioned a bit more directly.
Yes, that is probably, the fundamental point of today's show, isn't it? I mean, it's not just about answering the question, but it's on the flip side, showing the reality, like showing the mirror, as Amir Sahib said, to the general society, and showing that there are imbalances in society right now. So which answer do you look towards? Do you look towards Islam's solution, or is that not right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Amir Sahib makes a wonderful point that the fact of the matter is that this question is asked and an objection is raised against Islam. But if we look at the present society in which we live, we see that women are objectified to such a degree that that is degrading to their self-worth and their identity. And Islam, the kind of modesty that it teaches for men and women, addressing the men first, is not one which bars either one of them from being active members in society. What it does is that it prevents that objectification, something which everyone can notice even if they take a bus ride and look at the billboards that are on the streets. So the point is that Islam is a religion which simply addresses the natural needs and requirements of humanity. And again, in all of these answers, one thing which I felt needed to be highlighted was the practical examples in this day and age and in the history of Islam of women following these instructions of parda and then becoming leaders in society.
Great stuff. Amir Sahib, very briefly, because I'm told you have to move on.
An example that Hazur has given, that's very obvious, is in the Jamaat, we obviously have a ladies' auxiliary wing, Lajna Imalla.
Yes.
They organize on a massive scale, big events like the Jalsa. They're able to organize it on their own space, organize very important aspects of it, and repeatedly throughout the year, from charity walks to all sorts of events. So we have a practical example within the Ahmadiyya community of multifarious type of events being held, being organized by women, where they are empowered with their own responsibilities and duties.
Good, great stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib, and he was the 5th contestant and khadim to participate in today's show. If I read out the names just once more to remind the viewers, and you can go online and you can vote in the meanwhile. If you haven't had the chance, this is your last chance to go to www.mta.tv/face2face and cast your votes. First and foremost, we had Umar Amir Sahib from Canada. Then we had Brother Yusuf Penda Sahib from Ireland. Following that, we had Mahir Ahmed Deensa Sahib from Canada, followed by Junaid Ahmed Varaij Sahib from Pakistan, and last but not least, Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib from Burkina Faso. Inshallah, we will hear the results in just a short while. If you haven't had the chance to vote just yet, you can go online and you know what to do. You can cast your votes for the 2 candidates that you feel, the 2 contestants that you feel should go through to the semi-finals. In the meantime, we'll take a short break and look at the initial answers that we received from our Khuddam brothers from all around the world in answer to, if religion teaches us to be good humans, then why not just be good humans and not follow a religion? Let's take a look now at the answers that we received to this question.
The first point to address when answering this question is, what exactly does it mean to be a good person? And who or what can set the standard? It certainly can be man, because one man may have a different definition than another man. A man from the East may have a different definition than a man from the West. So any standard that would be set by man would be arbitrary and would never be agreed upon by all mankind.
However, the fact remains that even if somebody has become a good person, he will still need to join religion, because religion takes a good human to a higher level of human existence. It takes him to a higher level of being a godly person, a spiritual person.
Well, we hear this statement every now and then, that if the sole reason of having a religion is to be a good person, then why not be a good person and not follow religion? Well, as much as the statement contradicts itself, let us talk about it. First of all, we need to define what is a good human being. A good human being is a person who has all the etiquettes, the behaviors, a complete code of conduct for life that is acceptable, not only acceptable, but also helpful and beneficial for the people around him and all of the society. The question is it possible for a single human being to know all the etiquettes, all the behaviors, and a complete code of conduct to be a better person, a good person, a beneficial person for the complete society?
First of all, being part of any religion is not the measure of being good or bad. And not knowing what is right or wrong, an indication that one will automatically do what is right for the right reasons. And according to the Holy Quran, chapter 90, verse 11, man has been created with the knowledge of what is good and what is bad. Therefore, whether a Muslim, a Christian, or an atheist for that matter, we are all capable of being good humans.
Religion makes us a good person. That's true. Religion really does make us a good person. But that is an additional benefit we get when we follow a religion in a true sense. It's like a byproduct which we get from the main ingredient. Main ingredient is the religion.
Those were the answers that we received, just some of the answers that we received in the audition round in answer to the question that you just saw on the screen. And Amir Sahib, we saw a lot of faces from last year. Amir Sahib was obviously a judge last year, and so we both noticed some familiar faces from last year. And it was very encouraging to see that Khuddam, who took part last year, maybe didn't get through to the final or didn't win, but they still had the good, faith in them, spirit of competition in them to send their videos once again and contribute. So it's great to see that the spirit of Majlis Khuddamul Ahmadiyya being ignited among the Khuddam around the world. Amir Sab, I have asked judges this, and I think, I'm going to continue to do so until I get an answer. Who do you think the two names are in front of me?
Okay. Personally, I liked Umar Amir, and if we're marking them on argumentation, conviction and delivery, his conviction was, I felt, the strongest, and his delivery was good. Some of the other people were slightly monotone, and with the media, that may not come across well. So he, I felt, made up marks on those two categories. And probably the second person I would have is Mirza Ataur Rauf from last year, the guy who speaks like the BBC documentary maker. So I felt, again, his delivery was good, but his argumentation was quite strong as well. So again, we're looking at three categories. Sometimes people, they can be stronger in one, but they make up in the other two categories. These would be my two people, but of course I have no idea.
I think you do have an idea because, spoiler alert, I'm going to mention that now, but let me now go to my screen, and I will now turn to my screen and read the names out. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the votes. The votes are in. You, the viewers at home, voted. The judges voted. And it has been decided that Umar Amir Sahib from Canada and Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib from Burkina Faso have gone through to the semi-final rounds. Amir Sahib, you were looking at your screen, so obviously that might have helped you. Obviously, you had your results in front of you. But let's take Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib on the line. Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib, you have gone through to the next round. In light of what the judges have told you, how will you now be increasing your pace, as it were, to go through to the semi-finals?
Well, I must say, it's just a blessing of Allah Almighty. Otherwise, I do not consider myself to be capable enough to win this contest, because I was considering, to me, it was a tough contest. And of course, I would try to work hard more. I think it's just because of the curve of a mother who's playing for me there, in Pakistan. I know just a Moreover, I would like to use the platform. I would like to convey my heartiest salam to my beloved Azu through this channel, because I haven't seen him and I would love to see him in my life.
Inshallah, we look forward
to
Mirza Ataur Rauf Sahib, we look forward to seeing you in the semi-final rounds. Umar Amir Sahib from Canada, how are you feeling knowing that you're going through to the semi-finals?
Alhamdulillah, Qasir Sahib, I have to say I'm completely humbled. I had been taking notes from the judges' feedback, so inshallah I hope to incorporate that into the rounds moving forward as well.
Great stuff, brilliant. Judges, you obviously made some points along the way. Khalil Sahib, if you could just summarize what we've learned from today, and what do you think should be the point that we should take home with us in light of today's question and obviously from the answers that we've heard?
So I want to see much more confidence in future. I'd also like to see some reference to international human rights. We didn't hear anything about freedom of expression or freedom of religion today. I would have liked to have heard some arguments about gender reassignment. I mean, in a society now in which you can decide whether you're a man or a woman, surely a woman should be able to decide where she wants to sit and what she wants to wear. So I'd like to see some really decisive arguments going forward. But overall, I thought it was a great effort from everybody. I would also say I came across some very good leaflets on women's rights and the status of women, which I think the Tabligh department in the UK had done, Lajna. Worth having a look at those for anybody who wants to really get into the depths of this argument.
Brilliant. And just a quick tweet I just want to mention and read out. We received a tweet from Shanzai Sahiba from Canada. She said that there are many Muslim women in politics, doctors, engineers. I, as an Ahmadi Muslim, go to school, work and do community work side by side with men, and I do not feel myself inferior in any area of life. As a wife, I have a right on my husband's money, but my husband doesn't on mine. As a daughter, it's my right to be provided good education and be married with a good partner. Before the advent of the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people would bury their daughters. As a mother, paradise lies under my feet. I chose to wear the hijab because I feel more confident in it. Very straightforward answer. By the grace and blessings of Allah, we've heard answers from not only the Khuddam, we've heard answers from members of Lajna Imaillah as well. And it has been very encouraging to know that Ahmadi youth, Ahmadi members around the world have the answer to such a question, inshallah, in the next program. But before I do announce that, I should mention that obviously the views that are expressed on Face2Face They don't always necessarily reflect the official stance of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, but from what we've heard today, these are some interesting points that the judges have raised, and inshallah this is something that we should all take home with us and ponder over those points. Our next episode, inshallah, is on Sunday, the 9th of December 2018 at 1900 GMT, that's 7 p.m. GMT. And the question we will ask our Khuddam brothers who will be participating in the 5th and final round of the qualifying rounds is: you are visiting an Islamic museum where many swords are displayed. Another visitor turns to you and remarks, "They love glorifying violence, don't they?" What would be your response? A very blunt sort of, immediate and spontaneous answer that we require from our Khuddam, but it'll be interesting to see what our Khuddam have to say. 24 hours in advance, you can go to the website and you can vote for your favorite 2 contestants and watch the videos as well. Until next time, from all of us here at Face to Face, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a champion of women's rights.
But rather to be spiritual beings who are connecting with God Almighty.
Suggesting that, morality comes from God Himself.
The very nature of man is that man was created weak.
Love God with all your heart and mind.